Hey everybody, my name is Carter Easler. I help produce Your Natural Dog with Angela Ardolino, and today we have such an incredible conversation. I can't wait for you to hear it. Our guest is Blake Dube of Paw Print Oxygen, and Angela and Blake just have a really fantastic conversation all about really this kind of unused world of pet oxygen supplementation for all sorts of different conditions, from collapsed trachea to addressing this canine respiratory virus that's going around. And this guy, he's kind of a whiz kid brainiac who's developed a product that really brings this therapy into an accessible place for the average pet parent, and is also kind of an industry disruptor, which is something that we really love. So enjoy this conversation, and here it is.
This is Blanche, and she's the most noodle-ish dog you've ever met in your entire life. She's just the most loved dog you've ever met, but if you leave her alone, it becomes a total opposite thing. Blanche has severe separation anxiety to the point where she will scratch doors down to the wood, bark all night, cry if you leave her for 5 minutes. I tried the collars, I tried the sprays, I tried thunder blankets. The only thing that's ever worked was CBD, and that's why I got started in this business. Our calm tincture is 550 milligrams of full spectrum CBD and lavender. It's the perfect remedy for separation anxiety, stress, or fear. I love my dog, and I hated knowing that she was home freaking out. So I wanted to find an all-natural way to do it, no doggy Prozac, all natural. And once I found CBD, there's no other option. CBD Dog Health, healing naturally.
And we're back with Blake Dube, and I met you at a conference, and I was so impressed with what you are doing. I can't even remember if I told you why, but I had a rescue farm for 17 years, and for the past 6 years, they were all the rescues were old, decrepit dogs with all kinds of issues that I literally was taking in and trying. They were like, last hope, whether it was a veterinarian giving it to me or a pet parent who had given up, and was able to take them off all of their prescription meds that weren't helping them, change their diet, give them plant and fungi medicine, literally bring them back to life. But in that process, and some of these dogs, they need so much extra support, and that's when I learned about oxygen. And literally my choices were to spend like $1,500 on a little thing. I already had an oxygen tank because I was doing ozone at home. So I was like, why can't there be something that I can literally just attach? So then I met you. And it was like, okay. And then I found out why you did this. Tell my audience, because I love that you are basically fulfilling a need and helping pets, because, we know a lot of us know what it's like when, you call 911 and a person has to be transported and given oxygen. But when that happens for a pet, and when that happens, if that happens, there's literally no option for pets. And you basically solve that problem, right?
Yeah. So you hit it right on the head. So you call an ambulance and, they're giving you oxygen right on the way to the hospital. And that really, except for in the biggest cities, does not exist for pets. And even then, the response times can be tough. So like you mentioned, so much of pet care is in the hands of the pet owner at home. And we really want to...
Say that again. I want you to say that again, because that's my, mission, is to really get pet parents to take their pet's health into their own hands. Nobody's going to do it for you.
Yep.
Some of us are lucky enough to have killer holistic veterinarians who love what they do, but guess what? They're booked to, year 2020, whatever. So say that again, because this is exactly what it does. Instead of you rushing to putting your sick or, pet that's having issues in a car and driving to a veterinarian, well, you're probably going to have to sit in your car and wait. You literally can do something at home. So say it again.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So pet care is more and more in the hands of the pet owner at home. And what we're doing specifically for that is our goal is to make oxygen accessible for pet parents. And it seems easy enough, right? It's really easy to make a lot of, your traditional drugs, supplements, things like that accessible because they come in a pill or a pouch or something like that. but oxygen is a gas, and gases are really hard to store, right? They like to spread out and take up all their space. And that's why we need those big, heavy, high-pressure tanks. And while you might be able to use one, a lot of people, that's too dangerous, right? They have this high-pressure thing sitting in their house. And it's certainly not. Yeah, exactly. And that's what we hear. People are scared of the oxygen. The only reason it's even dangerous is because of the pressure at which it's held. So what we said is, why don't we take this and put it in a smaller tank at lower pressure, so it's more similar to like your can of hairspray or sunscreen or something like that. So now you can, easily carry this. It's portable, lightweight, and you can administer at home. So our idea was, what if you could administer it as easy as any other supplement or drug? And that's how we came up with Paw Print Oxygen, which I know on the podcast you won't be able to see this, but this is the size of our canister. It fits in your hand, basically.
It's awesome.
So,
So, what is there an attachment for your dog to breathe it in?
Exactly. So it really depends on the condition, how you might administer it. But we do have a regulator and a pet oxygen mask, something like this, that is really designed to deliver the most oxygen and the least carbon dioxide to your pet. What we found is that a lot of times, if vets are using oxygen in the hospital, they might be using an anesthesia mask or even something they just kind of rig up themselves. But what we really want to do is make sure we're really lowering the pet's anxiety and giving them the right tool for the job, essentially. And that's why we designed our own oxygen mask, which is actually used by fire departments as well to rescue pets from house fires.
Oh, cool. And explain to us why oxygen is so important. I mean, of course, for us to breathe, but why do a sick or elderly pet need extra support in emergency situations?
Yeah, so there's a couple different reasons. The one great thing about pets is they don't get as much chronic respiratory disease as humans. Humans might need that oxygen tank when they get older, or maybe if they've been smoking, or sometimes it can just be genetic, or they get COPD or something like that. Pets can get that, but it's a lot less common. A lot of times they have this more acute need for oxygen where they're unable to regulate themselves. So I was actually listening to a fantastic episode you guys did with Dr. Judy Morgan, where she covers collapsed trachea.
Yeah.
That is our second most common condition. And that's an example of a dynamic obstruction. Basically, that milkshake straw, when you suck on it too hard, shuts. And you just need to give them extra oxygen because the airway is barely open, and kind of get them back to normal. So a lot of times, this is something that you're using at home to kind of manage that crisis and reset them, right? Get them back to normal. So that might be a laryngeal paralysis for something like a Labrador, or the collapsed trachea for our smaller toy breeds. Our number one condition is actually heart failure. One, because it's so common. It happens to affect 10% of all dogs. And what happens with that is generally you get water in the lung, which gives you less lung to breathe with, right? So if you only breathe in with 70% of your lung, you need more oxygen to go to that 70%. And so we provide a lot of this for when pets decompensate from things like heart failure and these other conditions. But, we service so many different conditions because ultimately respiratory distress is a result of so many of them. It could be heat stroke, stress, anxiety, all of that.
So I can imagine it would be really helpful if any of these dogs are suffering from this respiratory illness that's going around right now.
Yes, yeah. And unfortunately, that's one of those that is kind of the longer term oxygen, which we still help with. That's those oxygen cages and those, you've used an oxygen tank. We use our oxygen generators, things like that. But we have seen a small increase related to that. From what I've heard, it's nothing to panic about just yet,
right,
but it's a lot of symptoms related, like very similar to kennel cough, a little more severe, a little longer term. And what we've seen more is when that progresses to pneumonia, a lot of times we're providing our oxygen cages and concentrators for things like that. And, that can really work when they really only need oxygen, and it's the alternative to spending $2,000 a night or something like that in the vet hospital, if there's even a space for you, right? So we've definitely helped a lot of pet owners just kind of manage that at home where their pet is less stressed to begin with.
So how does this compare to like a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, like that I know is like a really expensive service that you can get, that I have actually had my Nina used to go get it done a lot. I believe it. How does that compare to this? Is this kind of the same thing?
So similar, but a lot less expensive because it has
Right.
to do a lot less, which is nice. So, those hyperbaric chambers are giving you, a higher pressure of oxygen. It's kind of almost like being in an airplane when they're pressurizing the cabin, things like that. So we actually, a lot of times hyperbaric can be for different sorts of conditions. Some of the conditions overlap. We get this question a lot about ozone too, which remember is O3, not O2.
Right.
So we don't do a whole lot with that. But essentially, you are getting a similar chamber to a hyperbaric system. But luckily, because we're just giving oxygen therapy at around, usually 40 to 60% oxygen, you don't need this high pressure vessel that has no leaks and all of that stuff. In fact, we encourage you to vent our cage to make sure their heat and all of that is kind of, accounted for. So what I'd say is ours is typically used, I would say, for a longer duration, whereas a hyperbaric chamber might be pretty short stints. I'm not sure what your experience is, how long you've done something like that, but you got to be careful of not getting too much oxygen to a pet because then they can get oxygen toxicity. So it's kind of funny because it seems very simple. You see your pet in the ER on oxygen and you go, I could fill a tub with oxygen and do that. But there's all these different considerations of not too much, not too little, making sure they're not rebreathing their CO2, getting too humid, getting too hot. So what we've done is we've basically provided vets and pet owners a way to do this very safely and easily at home with our guidance. So basically, we're going to hold your hand through the whole thing and make sure you feel good about it.
Ah, that's awesome. I love it. Because it is kind of scary when, you have that tank and you turn it on. Ozone used to freak me out. I actually think I only did it once, and all I would do was have my vet come over. Dr. Kathy Alanovi would come over, and she'd do it for me. And she's like, "Yeah, I'll do it."
Yeah. And I mean, it's worth being, a little, cautious around, right? Because people are always, like that, they just tend to be scared of oxygen. And we're really trying to change that narrative because, again, the only danger of this is the pressure at which it's held. So if you're getting one of our medical grade oxygen generators, that's not even at any pressure at all, right? It's constantly generating new oxygen from your room air. So, if you were taking it home and you're, in a car crash, nothing's going to happen to that thing, right? And even our little cylinders, they're safe enough just to be shipped UPS right to you. So the whole idea of this is to get rid of the high pressure tanks because we don't need them for these use cases. So these products are actually used in the veterinary hospital too, right? A lot of them are transitioning off of those high pressure tanks and using, something that's a little better designed for the thing they need.
And easier.
Yes. So we started this. I was a chemical engineer at the University of Pittsburgh, and I was working actually on making oxygen tanks smaller for people with respiratory disease in college. And then we met a local veterinarian who needed a way to transfer pets to the ER. So we really just kind of helped her out by designing this new system that was basically designed from the ground up, the new canister, a way to administer, oxygen's a drug. So we had to make sure this regulator can dose out the drug based on your pet's weight.
Oh.
And then this oxygen mask as well. So we designed the whole thing from the ground up. And the first time it was used was to transport from a primary care to a local ER right in our hometown. And it just kind of traveled on its own, right? You use this to get to the ER, and then the ER goes, "What the heck is this?" And they start using it. So we really spread kind of organically around Pittsburgh when we launched in 2019. And, it grew from there. We thought we were going to do a lot of transfers, and we still do. But now the biggest use case, like we came back to at the beginning, is the home care, right? Pet owners want this at home, whether it's for their brachycephalic pup in the summertime, their asthmatic cat, hypertension, pneumonia, like so many different conditions. So really, we sell a lot of these directly to pet owners in their homes now.
So you brought up the overheated brachycephalic, I can never say it, dog, the brachycephalic.
You got me messing up.
Yeah.
Brachycephalic.
Because I can never get it right. But yeah, the squish-faced, which, that became my mission to help them the moment I got into this because I couldn't believe how many are suffering from this. I had a groom shop, so we were always like literally everybody on alert when we got any of these dogs because grooming is stressful, they overheat, and it drove us crazy. Like literally there's a Frenchie on my logo for CBD Dog Health because of how many problems they had. So
we always hear about the pug toenail clipping. Pug toenail clippings are always scary, right? Things like that. So that's an example of, your pet can technically not even have a diagnosed condition, and they can just get into that vicious cycle because they can't regulate themselves as much as we can, especially with that morphology of the flat face. So again, just kind of giving them more oxygen so that to stop that cycle, because when you start breathing hard, you actually need more oxygen. So you breathe harder and you spiral kind of down. So we found through surveys with our customers that sometimes as little as 5 minutes of oxygen through this face mask at the beginning of an episode like that can stop it,
awesome.
Which is really cool. And a lot of vets are initially, skeptical of, hey, I've tried to mask a pet in the clinic and it's really stressful, and they don't like it. What we found is, one, if you're giving them an anesthesia mask with that big rubber thing on the end, they're not going to like that. But most importantly, when it's happening at home with their owner, and they start to feel the effects of the oxygen, something is helping them breathe easier, it really works. So we have almost no issues, even with asthmatic cats, which surprised me at the beginning. I thought a cat would never, never stand for this. But about 10% of our customers are cat owners. So, that's kind of the utility of this. I mean, we are used in grooming shops and things like that. There's just so many use cases. It's almost like your fire extinguisher that you keep just in case.
Yep. I have, I love to share with my listeners my toolkit of what I have, and everything I have is natural. So I really think this would be a wonderful addition to my toolkit, especially with my old dogs. Just
the schnauzer, right?
Oh, I lost Odie in March of this year. So I actually sold everything, and I'm on the road in an RV with my last 3 senior rescues. So I have Jolene, Maza, and Remy with me. And they're all good breathing wise, but I know how it gets. Like Odie, Odie was everything. Odie was collapsed trachea. He got diagnosed as congested heart failure at one time. Everything they stacked up the diagnoses when I took him in at age 9, and was able to really help him completely naturally. He died an old man at 16 and a half, and learned so much with him, and would have loved, to have this on hand for him. And I think about my others, because that's what's so scary about the respiratory illness things is, you're right. If you've got your pet is healthy and has a healthy immune system, it's probably not going to affect them or be an issue. It's our old dogs, just like our old people, are at greater risk. So I remember one of my really old seniors who beat cancer, lost her to pneumonia because of her picking up something when she went to go to a groom shop. So I don't think people understand that, how much more at risk they are, and how something like this can help them if they have it on hand.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where pet owner education, it's surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly for you, but it's one of our biggest things is just, we're always trying to get pet owners educated on, what their pet is like when they're normal, know what their normal looks like, so that when they're stressed, know what their labored breathing looks like, how often you can exercise your dog in the summer. We had these heat waves last year, and sometimes it was so hot in Texas, we get calls from owners where it's like, yeah, you shouldn't probably walk your dog today unless it's at 4 a.m. or something like that.
Right.
So we're learning these these new use cases kind of every day as vets call and say, hey, I actually used it for this on an exam table. We have rescuers using this with working dogs and things like that. So it's been a really fun area to be in. One, because people get into vet medicine because they love it and they love the pets. But 2, it's such a universal treatment, oxygen, that you can really see all kinds of different pets. And we always present a little summary at the end of the year of some of the exotics that we've helped, because it always surprises us. But I think this year we had a lot of birds, like sunkiners and macaws. We had a Gila monster, a turkey, a bunch of rats, things like that. So it just shows you how broad the need for oxygen is, right?
I love it. It's essential, like
Yep,
a hemp extract.
exactly.
Artie, you got any questions
Exactly.
for him?
I have a 7-year-old dog named Maisie who became suddenly paralyzed in her back legs. We opted not to put her through a risky surgery. We wanted to try to rehabilitate her holistically and naturally. Luckily, we had a wonderful veterinarian who utilized hemp oil from day one. Maisie ended up making a full recovery from her paralysis. We have been using the Ease tincture with Maisie, and we have noticed she's not as stiff and she's able to go up the stairs more easily and jump onto the couch without pain. Maisie is a very active dog, and we want to keep her as mobile as possible and out of pain. We are so thankful for this product. Maisie's very favorite activity is going for hikes in the woods, and I am so grateful that we are still able to do that together, and Maisie can remain mobile and pain-free.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to make it work for everyone. I mean, we've literally had someone, one of our teammates used to work for the Pittsburgh Zoo, and they will even fashion a mask out of a bucket for a polar bear.
Oh,
right?
gosh.
It's crazy. And we're used by the National Aviary in Pittsburgh, where they use it for spot checks on the birds and things like that. So yeah, the goal is accessibility, because truly, like, almost every animal could have an event for respiratory. And it's not just being accessible to the pet, it's how easy and quick is it for a pet owner, because these things happen like that, right? You can just come home and your pet is spiraling. So we did a lot of work to make sure that as soon as you pull this thing out of the box, this oxygen kit, it is ready to go. You have no questions. You can rely on it. So that was a big part of kind of our development at the beginning, is how can we go from this big tank that you're scared to use and takes a while to learn to this super quick portable kit that can just be deployed on the spot. Right.
So let's say, can we use it for therapeutically? I mean, I know we said like in a chamber and stuff, but like, what about a dog that, again, isn't really have any signs of anything? We just want to, I don't know, do it as a therapy and give them some extra oxygen. Is that something that you can do for a dog that's maybe suffering from cancer or seizures or anything? Will it benefit them?
So technically, for the benefit part, since oxygen's a drug, it is approved to treat symptomatic respiratory distress. So that's kind of the line we toe. But I will say we've had a lot of pet owners call in and tell us their own stories, right, where they are giving it, daily for different conditions, kind of, a couple hours at a time for one condition or another, and they feel it really improves their pet's health. So that's, I think, a really interesting area of explanation. We started our company, in kind of the core of a couple really well documented diseases where, you can point to the literature and go, look, that says oxygen is indicated. Because we kind of had our work cut out for us to just educate vets that, hey, you can do this. And now that people are comfortable with it, we're seeing a lot more of these. So I would like to see this more, more pet owners, because oxygen has such a high therapeutic index, which means it's very helpful with very little risk, especially in a form factor like this. You're never going to. Yes, it's funny. I think we have a lot of the same, benefits and challenges where you have a lot of education to do, right? And so do we. So
at least your oxygen doesn't get anybody high. There's no risk of that. But again, I think it's funny how you're saying veterinarians aren't considering it as a medicine or something that they can use, because it's another natural medicine that they're not even taught about on how to use it. And that's why they don't know. And people like us have to come in and go, hey, there's an endocannabinoid system. Hey, oxygen is medicine. All natural.
Yeah.
No bad side effects.
Exactly. Yeah. And that takes time, and it's been really helpful because, sometimes you have vets that are more skeptical than others, but we've had some amazing vets who, as soon as they see what it can do, they're like, can't wait to go out and try and give it to other pet owners. And so we see ourselves as really like, we work with both vets and pet owners. And a lot of times we're bridging the gap, right? Because
right.
You could be the smartest veterinarian in the world. You're probably not going to know the exact flow rate of oxygen to give to this dog in this environment with this condition. So we try to be that. And what's really rewarding about it too, I don't know if you experience this at your company as well, is we get to develop a relationship with the pet owner. And so we have them telling us all these stories, because when their pet's in the hospital, they're stressed out. And you probably can't use your vet as that sounding board for 2 hours. But if you call us, you can. So we can walk them through it, assure them that, we have seen this before, we can help. And it means we have just a lot of like really thankful pet owners and pets that we, track and we keep up with. So it makes it so nice that it's not transactional. We're not just selling a device, right? We're selling a whole education support system, all that stuff. And that's what makes it fun to do this.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your big brain in creating this. I think it's awesome. I think it's something that the industry needs. And I love that you also made it that pet parents can do it, whether their veterinarian is on board or not. And hopefully more will be, because it's awesome.
Well, thank you, Angela. I love that you're doing this, by the way, and giving people a chance to educate. I mean, I literally watched like 5 episodes of your podcast just to learn about some other topics that I didn't know about. So
yeah. Well, welcome to the holistic world. It is nice. We try to support each other as much as possible, because we know how hard it is to get our message out about something that's natural. And they don't want you to know. So welcome to the world. We'll introduce you to all kinds of people.
Well, thank you. I look forward to it. And thank you, Carter.